Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Rare Book Room. My name is Nicholas. I help direct the events here at Strand Bookstore. For a bit of interesting history, the Strand was founded in 1927 by the Bass family over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled until after over 91 years, Strand is the sole survivor of that conglomerate of bookstores. Still run by the Bass family and still housing new and used books. I heard one person clap. Awesome.
Yeah, there we go.
Tonight we're excited to house music for a change and to welcome the Grammy-winning Harvard professor, singer, songwriter, and multi-talented musician, Esperanza Spalding, to the Rare Book Room. Esperanza has just released her 7th album, 12 Little Spells, in the physical world, having previously released the brilliant, expansive, and, of course, totally unique songs One at a Time last October. The New York Times called it one of the best albums of 2018, and we are very excited to welcome it at the end of its journey from screen to record sleeve. Joining Esperanza to discuss the album and her career is Anna Deveare Smith, whose work, yes, applause, whose work as an actor, playwright, author, director, and educator has been nominated for the Pulitzer Prize and Tony Awards, awarded the prestigious Dorothy and Lillian Gish Prize for Achievement in the Arts, and in 2012, awarded the National Endowment for the Humanities Medal by President Barack Obama.
Good times.
I couldn't be more thrilled to have these unbelievably talented women here tonight to discuss the next leap from a creative mastermind, quite frankly. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Anna, Esperanza, and 12 Little Spells to the Strand.
Told you Tad would be here. He's right. Well, I, as anybody who follows Twitter, it was sort of amazing that Esperanza invited me to do this. So for those of you who are real jazz aficionados, I hope I'm not disappointing, and you will have a chance to ask questions. If you're here, if you're like a really major jazz aficionado, would you applaud so we have some sense of what the house is like tonight? That's pretty cool. So, 12 Little Spells, which are so magnificent. You know how much I love them and have had a chance to really listen very carefully and read them and come to see them twice. I want to just start by asking you what magic is. And you think you're magical. And what does that mean, to be magical? Yeah, it's in one of the
now
spells.
I see how you played that whole green room, like, oh, la-di-da.
No, what happened was that's not even true because I wrote to Esperanza. I texted her and I said, could we please give me some guidance of what you would like to, discuss? And she was like, well, I like to flow. So that's what we're doing. And that's what we're doing.
Wow. Wow. What is magic? I will not give a definition of it. I will not reduce it to one definition, even my own definition. But I would like to describe something, a phenomena that I think could easily exist in the realm of magic, but it comes from the medical field. And it's not the placebo effect. So you can keep listening. When a patient comes in that's suffering from phantom limb pain, the doctors can't treat that with medicine. There's not a chemical that relieves the brain. So in a way, in the first place, that pain is almost magical, right? Because you're seeing reality, but your brain, your felt sense of reality is telling you something very different. Something that's not possible. Like, it's not possible that you have an itch on your hand because your hand's not there. it's not possible that it feels like your hand is clenched because your hand is not there, but you feel it. So already that's like leaking into the realm of magic. So as far as I know, granted I haven't checked up on this like daily, the only treatment that relieves phantom limb pain that's been discovered so far is when the practitioner, the therapist, creates an illusion with a mirror or with a computer screen. So the person intellectually understand that my hand is not there, but they'll see in the mirror what looks like their hand and get to either scratch that hand or unclench the fist, and the brain releases the patterning of the phantom limb pain. So that to me is magic. It's an illusion. And not even, it's more than an illusion because the doctor's letting you know what they're doing. It's even more than when you see a magic trick when you don't know how it happens, but you know it's not possible. And for this particular moment in time, for the work that we're here to talk about today, to me, that is like the definition of magic. It's that space where we can intellectually know something. We know that this poem on the page is just words that a person who's not even alive anymore wrote, and your body will tingle, or you'll feel like crying, or your heart will rise into your throat. You'll have an anatomical response to something that nothing has changed. And that realm of magic is the realm that I want to explore.
And in exploring this, what do you know so far? Or is this something we're not supposed to know because it's magic? I like you, man.
Right. What do I know so far?
And, well, so maybe is magic in the realm of knowledge?
Whoa.
You know, I can imagine magic. I can imagine a time that a avant-garde performance art spellbinding, particularly the spellbinding part, transcendental performer like you would not be a professor at Harvard. Right?
I still don't know how I'm a professor.
But you are.
But I am, and I'm.
But
like
you
the
are.
benefits.
You're now a part of that thing, right?
I
Do you see a day when they'll be teaching magic at Harvard? Maybe they are they?
Well,
That's what I mean when I say,
yes.
How is it in knowledge?
Okay. I hear that. I think actually what we would categorize as like magical or wishful thinking or whimsical are things that are not as familiar as having a pedagogy. That was not a very well-formed thought, but what I'm trying to say is once we develop a pedagogy to describe why something has the effect it has, it tends to kind of move out of the realm of the mystical and the magical. I think this kind of quote-unquote magic that we're dealing with, and even just borrowing that term, which is not comprehensive to describe it, the term magic, it's still in this space that doesn't yet have like a comprehensive or like a universally referred to pedagogy, which is using illusion to affect anatomy, using illusion through sound, through imagery in words, textures and music, etc., to have a targeted effect on the body.
Yeah.
It's starting to be explored in music therapy. Granted, I did not talk about this stuff openly when I got hired to work at Harvard, full disclosure. Like, I did sign my name magically Esperanza, but I think
On the contract?
no, I didn't sign the contract.
Oh,
because
okay.
it said I would be an officer or a servant of the, and I was like, ooh.
Do they know you haven't signed the contract yet?
Let's not talk about this
Okay.
anymore. I think
you signed something magically,
I
Esperanza.
just signed everything magically Esperanza, and I think they're just, that's cute, she's an artist. You know, I think now they're starting to realize, what I'm really there to do, which is to, I don't want to design pedagogy for what we would call magic, but I do want to explore that space that's still seen as very mysterious. Like, why does this kind of music versus that kind of music enable a person with Parkinson's to walk?
Yeah.
as they sing it.
So now you're really talking about healing.
Yes.
But maybe you think magic and healing are the same thing, but why don't you say something about the potential of where you think you'd have to be? What kind of, if we were to make you a lab, anybody out there, if you have money, please listen. If we were to fundraise for you to have a lab to do some work on music and healing, and people do it, but who would you need in your lab to do that?
Ooh, okay. I would want some neuroscientists. I would want some early childhood development specialists. I would want some chemical biologists. I don't know what the word is for like a chemical biologist who studies the chemicals in our bodies. Anybody know what that term is? That. And I would want some healers who are well-schooled and deeply ingrained in a practice of healing with sound that don't come from, the degree system, the academic system of, affirming the value of a healer. And obviously some music therapists, some practitioners who are in the field, and probably a lot of musicians, because I think, what is the blues? Alchemizing experience and offering it back to someone that you think has had a common pain with what you figured out eases that pain for you. So I think artists sort of inherently have a sense of what soothes, at least. I also think, in terms of like military music, we have a sense of what intimidates. We have a sense of what like energizes. We have a sense of what hides. We have a sense of what brings a tear. So artists are already operating in the space of like using their own felt experience as the laboratory. And I think that that's really valuable. I wouldn't like discredit that just because we need to prove in like a academically authorized test
our
what's
impact.
Happening. Yeah. Also just to remember, probably 100 years ago, well maybe not that recently, but we didn't know how sound translated to electricity in our brain. Like that's new information. So before then it was it was a phenomenon that I don't know if we called it magical, but there was something happening that could be experienced that wasn't described yet, physically. We didn't know that once it gets past that little hammer, it's just electrical signals. And now you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, because it's not resonating around inside my brain, it's not hollow in there, so how do I hear sound? How do I understand sound? And I bet, as we unfold into the technological future, the expandingly technological future, more and more we'll be able to kind of track through those lenses, through those measuring systems, like magical effects that the arts have on anatomy. But for now, I have no shame in saying my body is the laboratory, and my experience of living and reading a lot about just how symbology can be used to affect certain sensations, colors, etc. That's my laboratory that I used, very unendorsed by academia, to develop this batch of magic.
Well, and to some extent, your performances are that laboratory also.
True.
And you've been able to perform 12 Little Spells in different kinds of spaces. Do you think the space itself affects or anything about your conjuring? Like I saw you in a jazz club in LA, and then I saw you in Town Hall, and I'm sure you've been in a lot of different spaces. How does the space itself affect the bringing forth and the connection, or what you think is going forth and even coming back to you?
Right. A lot of what's happening in a space that's like affecting performer and audience engagement probably has to do with like all the cues that we're getting subconsciously from the design of the space. Like, do we feel like we're supposed to be quiet in here? Do we feel like we're supposed to be responding? Are we on our feet? Are we sitting down? Like, how ornate is the frame? Does this look like a modern building? Does this look like, grimy shit happen? Sorry for cussing, grimy stuff happening here? Like already, in a way, we're already being informed by the symbology of the space. It's already having an effect on like our instinctive response or our response. That being said, so I don't know, but I'm sure it affects it. That being said, I invited in some individuals who would self-identify as shamans to work the space.
All the spaces or one in
Not all the
particular?
spaces, a few of the spaces. And then I was trying to find somebody in Texas, and I texted Erykah Badu, and I was like, Miss Badu, my goddess, my idol, like my hero, hallowed be thy name, whatever. I was like, do you recommend somebody I can call in Dallas? And she said, I need to call you. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm at the airport, and I get this FaceTime video call from Erykah Badu. I've never spoken with her before on the phone, ever. I'm not just name dropping. Wayne would say I'm name lifting. Anyway, she...
Shorter, Wayne Shorter.
She calls me on FaceTime, and she's in bed, and I'm at the airport trembling because I love her so deeply. And she's like, what I want to tell you is that you don't need nobody to do that for you. Like, we have it inside of us. Just go in that space and take your breath. All human breath is cleansing. All human breath is like the healer, the master, like, etc. She was like, her eyes were all like locked in on my eyes, and she just like gave me this, I don't want to say it's permission, but it was like, you find that. Like, whatever you think you're outsourcing to the master, the expert, like, it's your space. You know what the space wants to feel like. Like, plug into that and bring that through your body and send it into the space. Like, it doesn't have to be the best version of that.
Yeah.
It's your space. And I can't report on what that had in terms of effect on the space, but it certainly changed my feeling about being in the space and the band's feeling, because we've never done that before. We've never thought about, like, oh yeah, what's happening energetically, like in that back corner. It felt like it extended our awareness into the whole space, which then encompasses every person in the space. And that did feel very different. Like, we were trying to like access and be in conversation with the whole room, just instead of like where we heard our sound going to, you know?
Well, yeah, it could be the history of the room, too, in addition to the people in it. Most of these halls are literally for rent. By that I mean we're all just visiting, all of us, the performers.
Yeah.
Now, what about, because I noticed in the book Psychomagic that Badu is either, she blurbed the book, or her name's in the book, or somewhere in the beginning of the book. Say something about Psychomagic, what it is. Obviously, the two of you are attracted to this idea of psychomagic.
I want to first just, Psychomagic. That book was lying open at my friend Stelios's apartment. I had no idea what it was, but whatever was on that page felt like that thing where you find out you have a sibling. And you're like, these aren't my real parents? Like, what? It was a thing of like, someone out here is already deeply engaged in the study of a thing that I just became aware of was even a thing you could think about. And and at that moment, it was just that, just seeing that page, I don't remember what chapter it was like such a profound affirmation that there's something to pursue here in this realm of what he calls shamanic psychotherapy. And the way that Alejandro Jodorowsky, the author of that book, speaks about it, he speaks about using the medium of performance, of image conjuring, of use of space, language is a use of space as well, to almost like shock open or clash into each other constriction on the totality of our human capacity. And most of that constriction has entangled itself around our potential and expansiveness because of shame, because of family experience, because of pain, because of trauma, because of one thing that your grandma told you when you were 5 that is like still in there, like wrapped around your core. And he really explicitly walks through, I would say, like an approach, a therapeutic approach, a shamanistic approach of leaning into how what you already can do freely in art can be a vehicle that facilitates or invites that level of exploration by others who engage with your art. Even the word art is like, but that was a very long description. That's why I shouldn't ever,
No, but you should, because
make slogans or whatever.
I mean, I think it brings us back to healing, and I'm thinking about hair. Your spell about hair, and we'll open up for a question, but clearly the spells are focused on the body, and our bodies have a history, and you're aware, very aware of that history throughout your spell making and spell binding. But how about this? Into our tangled sound. How about this? Night-tone mother and her light newborn, curling each other flat and tight into our tangled sound. Muted howl, song of blue flame, the brilliant-headed silhouettes, shuffling candles through a nation's lightless dawn, kindling fires, mass must wake to, fires for hot irons pressing big house finery wearable. Boo, 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 boo. Whose image have we been made in, composed for, orchestrated by? Our principal's eye, the concert master, ignore the mumbling audience, situating late to their seat. Or standing room only stance in this stately hall built for silence. But, right.
I just want to hear you read everything I ever wrote.
Come on.
Oh, shit, it sounds so good when you read it.
Believe me, she sounds awfully good singing it. But the stately hall's built for silence. What about those?
Yeah, what about those? I don't remember who told me this, but somebody said I should never do like a definition of a poem. Like I should never deconstruct a poem. I will say something that's been coming up a lot for me around the time that this was written is this observation of how the unwanted, the unseen, the unrecognized genius, cultural genius, etc., particularly of communities of color, or I would just say communities who tend to not be newscasters, all of a sudden, that's like cultural capital. And these big institutions, stately halls built for silence, suddenly are like flailing to bring in this cultural capital. It's like the ship's going down and they think that that's what's going to keep it afloat. And that hurts my heart in some ways, because it's like you've been in an abusive relationship, like for 20 years with some abusive partner. And all of a sudden they're like, but I need your kidney. And then they start treating you real nice and you fall for it. And you're like, okay, well, you'll start paying my bills again so you can have my kidney. And it hurts my heart. It hurts my heart because a lot of the times I don't feel like there's a true relationship, a mutual respect and admiration for the voice, the cultural experience, the history, the struggle of these artists that are being kind of sucked up into these spaces to save the sinking ship. I feel like it's very extractive, actually, and that if these institutions found a way to survive without these people, they'd just be like, well, anyway, back to what we're used to. I hope that that's incorrect, and it's not always the case, but I've been resonating on that a lot from personal experience and from accounts of friends in the performing arts who don't have the luxury like I do of paying for what I do by doing what I do. Like a lot of friends who have to get a grant to finish doing the thing that they came here to do. Just the other day it came up, it'd be like if a dental hygienist had to ask for money to go clean your teeth before you came in. You know? That's on top of what you're gonna pay when you get in there. Because people are paying tickets to see the art, you know? It was just burning in my system, and I just feel like, particularly in this era where more and more people feel comfortable to let their hair be whatever it is, like whatever your ancestry is, like celebrating that almost like a flag of your origin, like a flag of your lineage. I'm just peeping like more of this hair in these stages and going like, but what was up 50 years ago? Like all the people who never got a chance to be up on that stage, you know? Because the Stately Hall was built for silence, and the silence is like, we don't want to hear you loud cultural people up in here because you're not real.
On that very provocative note, let's take a question or two.
Yeah, I'm really loving this conversation about magic. And
Would you stand up a little so we can see you too? Thank
Hi.
you.
I'm really loving this conversation about magic, and I like how there seems to be these lines being drawn between the body, science, and awareness as a means of almost excavating a piece of what's interior to you and putting it in conversation with maybe what that piece of interiority might be in other people. Or in a space, or in a cultural conversation, or a cultural happening. And I'm curious from your perspective, this idea of observation in science and the way that observation changes things. And you have to keep observing in order to...
The Heisenberg principle.
Right, so you have to keep observing in order to understand what you've already understood. So I guess what I'm interested in is what... through this act of magic, the act of awareness, you feel is changing in you that you keep having to follow up on and keep observing and keep observing and keep observing.
Wow. Yeah. That feels like a question that could just be posed to everybody in this room, you know? If we're willing to like entertain, believe, allow into our awareness the themes that you just brought up, you know? Like what changes as you observe it? What does the observation do? I think what's coming up in response to that offering that you just gave is how I tend to feel beholden to what I've said about something that didn't start as language. So there's a translation that is happening in real time for the sake of communicating a process that I don't actually understand at all. It's very visceral and multisensory, including senses that I don't think we have words for, at least I don't know them. But in the space of like wanting to maybe like justify the process or place it in a way that doesn't sound like I'm just saying like, I made magic spells, the end. Because I don't feel totally confident to stand in that. I want it to be more than, I guess it's not wanting to leave all the areas open to interpretation. It's like clarifying that it's this more than it's that, even though I don't know exactly what it is. So sometimes I feel beholden to like a term that I came up with to describe something. Not even externally, it's like, then I'll start hearing that in my own head. And it like reduces a process that was expansive to something that I can explain to myself, you know? Which is just the danger with language in general. And I guess the danger with observing things, because you have to decide how you're gonna observe it. And I'm just thinking like, imagining work being done to learn what group singing does for soldiers with PTSD who aren't helped by by drugs, by medicine, by pills. You're only measuring group singing. And like, what are you measuring about group singing? You know, are you tracking the volume of the singing? Are you tracking the familiarity with the other people you're singing with? Like, inevitably, things are being cut out of the observation equation. And I actually think sometimes what artists do intuitively is way more comprehensive than the analysis you can do intentionally. Like from tracking all the origin points of where you came up with that idea and like why you're doing it that way and like why you chose to put red over there. 'Cause sometimes you're like, I don't know, I just thought red was right. And then later you find out why it had to be red, you know? So it's something about wanting, because of who I am, I like to describe things and also wanting to a certain degree protect that intuitive process and not like be too aggressive with it and too demanding on it and like let it be mysterious and unknown a little bit, because that is the realm of magic, right? It's like,
And to some extent, science. I'm thinking of a scientist who said to me that science is being patient enough to allow Mother Nature to reveal herself to you.
listen.
Say some things about patience.
Wow, I just need to sit with that for a second. Wow, yeah, right. Right, because we're observing phenomena. We can manipulate aspects of the total phenomena, but wow, that's so
But also, I
beautiful.
mean, your process, your creative process, to some extent, you know, it's intuitive, and it's also a process that you go through. And say something about the big project you did last September in that way, that you were very generous. You let us all watch you for how long? 36 hours or
77
more?
hours.
77 hours. How many of y'all caught that online, right? Right? Whoa! We got to watch that. Say something about that.
Patience. Wow. Well, what's coming up is the sense, the trust is like a sensation of a specific kind of trust, which is like when you get a little hit of a musical idea. I always believe it's like the corner of a T-Rex skeleton. And if I just stay there with the brush, eventually like this pattern that must be that, like it's not gonna be another thing. Even if the bone starts over here and that bone's over there, like eventually you'll be like, oh, okay, I see, they go like this. There's like a certain inevitability that I experience in the creative process, but it's slow as hell. You know, and that's now after many, many years of like studying patterns and like theory and blah, blah, blah. So I guess the patience and the process it's just like it's a bone of this shape. There's only so much dirt around it. I only have the tools that I have, so I'm just gonna keep brushing until the thing comes out and I can see what other bone it goes with, and just trust that maybe it's a small animal, maybe it's a large animal, but if I just stick with that, it will be clear what it wants to be. There is an inevitability in it, and it's almost like surely I tend to hear certain things because of what I've listened to and what I've studied, but there's a trust in that too, of like you have this like familiarity with form in general, you know, because of how much form you've absorbed, not just from what you've studied officially, but there's just similar forms everywhere. You know, that's like the Schillinger philosophy, that there's only so many patterns that tend to express themselves in various aspects of a reality, in a mountain range, in the way a flower grows, in a song, you know, and what we tend to respond to as looking composed in a painting, you know. I think that has its limits for sure, but I appreciate, I think, what I perceive Schillinger to be talking about.
I want to just ask you again about your audience. Well, we talked about the place. We didn't really talk about the audience. We talked about magic. We talked about healing. And it occurred to me, and I wrote to you about this, about the spells. I started thinking about beauty because, you know, you're really doing a kind of theater now right? For people who haven't seen the spells performed, there is a mise en scène.
What does that mean?
It's a construction of a kind of a scene, a place.
Okay.
It's not just a black stage. There's a place. And I saw 2 different costumes. One was a very beautiful red dress, reminded me somehow of Lena Horne when she was on Broadway, and many people felt healed by that beautiful production, and of course, her magnetism, your magnetism. And then it was a sort of a greenish dress, green, beautiful, fairy earth dress, I would say. And so I thought about wonderful scholar at Harvard, Elaine Scarry, who I've spoken to previously about beauty. And she, in one of the conversations, led me to St. Augustine. And so that led me, in thinking about you, to really look up exactly Augustine's De Musica on music. And this is what is written. Rhythm is within its own kind beautiful. But we must not love such beauty as if it would make us blessed. We must treat it as if we would a plank among the waves of the sea, not casting it away as a burden, but not clinging to it as if we imagined it firmly fixed. We must use such rhythm well so that eventually we may dispense with it. Whoa. And I think about that as many things. And one thing is the position of the healer, or you who we observe, you who entertain us, you who, in this you say, will help us, that we come to you, we come to your beauty, we come to your enchantment, we come to your music and your talent. But how do you think about this idea of we shouldn't cling to it, that we should let it go? We shouldn't disregard it, but we shouldn't cling to it, which of course that's what big fans do, you know, they cling and they, you know, we've seen all those movies about those fans and the diva, or the man diva, right? You hear what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah. Wow. Right, because it feels like not wanting to entertain a myth past its function to lead you to a truth. If there is, in fact, a truth to be revealed by said myth. And it almost feels like that's the challenge in general when people create very enticing works as creators, that the work will be confused with the person, you know? And maybe even the value of the myth will be confused with like what it can reveal about what's not a myth. Just
or the scripture with the
being.
preacher.
Amen. Also something about, I think pretty talented people are very good at knowing how to yield that to bring people into their work, because it's just another tool at our culture at this particular place in time space. It is a magnetizing phenomena. We love exceptionalism, and we love what's generally presented as aesthetic beauty, what we value as topical aesthetic beauty. And I think that's like a dancing space of like, okay, using all that to like bring people to a place so that another thing can happen, and then asking like, but deal with the other thing, not the thing that brought you in. And yeah, I don't have a statement or a comment on that.
Well,
I'm just aware that it's a phenomena that I use, you know.
Yeah, and I think in the spells, you set us free at a certain point.
Oh, good.
You know, right? Dance, right? Get up and dance at a certain point.
That's true.
Right?
That true. Also, there's like a two things are coming up. I think there is a certain potency of anonymity that's created when you're watching somebody else do something. It's like that thin veil of like, oh, you're performing and I'm not a part of this, I'm over here, seems to make like a comfort space to explore emotions that you wouldn't explore if you were like in a direct conversation, or even like alone with yourself. And I think that there's also something about that, of the power of anything deemed art. Like as soon as something becomes a photograph versus just like it's next to you, just that little bit of anonymity gives you space to have all the sensations about it. And I think that is a great gift of performance, actually.
Although the activists would say that it creates a kind of a passive observance that, makes us think when we watch the news we're doing something about it.
Okay.
Or Anita Hill told me that after that, you were too young, but that incredible like weekend or whatever that felt like a month of what happened to her, that she got mugged in public. That people would rush up to her on the street and say, I watched you.
Right.
Like, that's all you have to do,
Right.
right? And now we have Clarence Thomas on the court.
Yeah.
Like, all I have to do is watch, right?
Well, yes. And of course, in your work, it feels to me like what you're activating is impetus. Like that proximity and like sensation, it's like it's a pull. I feel to like don't just sit there and absorb this. Like now that's been unlocked, like use that angst, use that discomfort, use that shock to move.
But I feel that in the spells.
Oh wow.
I see it's like you all over it is you, and now you, and now you, and you can, and you, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's in the spells, right? Because as a magician, presumably you want that person in front of you not just to like the trick, but to be changed in some way.
Well, okay. Now let's get what we call in Oregon woo-woo for a second. So I'm going to connect something that Holodowski said in Psychomagic with an experience I've had giving Reiki treatments. And if you don't know what Reiki is, it's okay. It's experiential. You might feel it, you might not. It's like music. Like you can't describe what's actually happening technically, but if it does something to you, you feel it. And if it doesn't, you don't. Anyway, so he talks about how the healer has to be detached from what is being sent. Because if it's anything valuable, like you don't even consciously up here understand what you've put together for the sake of he calls them consultants, not patients or clients. And I really love that in the sense of like, it's not, I'm doing this for you. It's like, I noticed this and that, and I'm going to hand it to you, and then now it's yours if it's useful. And in Reiki sessions, often stuff will come up that later you learn from the person you knew without having any way of knowing. Like, I could give tons of examples, but you'll just start doing something. You don't know why you're doing it. You'll just you'll just start doing something, and then you'll stay there longer. You're not understanding why. You just are doing it. And then after they'll be like, I don't know how you knew, but that knee, I had just had a da-da-da, and I was like wishing you wouldn't move. These things start to happen, and like it only works if you're detached. To me, it only works if you're like, this, like, I'm trusting that I've practiced being able to do something that is partially informed by, maybe if an analysis was done of like everything you'd heard and said and felt with that person, you could understand obviously why you did that, but consciously I'm not able to track that. So I'm just gonna trust that there's a part of my brain that's doing this, and I have to be detached. Because as soon as it starts to feel like me, the conscious reasoning kicks in, and that's limited. And then you're only stuck with what you understand can or can't happen because. And if there is anything happening in this music, and I don't really care, to be totally honest, because it's done. Like I did what I tried to do. Like it's over there. I think they're great songs. I imbued them with very specific choices to have these effects. But in another way, it's like, so Like that's what I wanted it to do, but so what? It's yours. Like it does whatever the hell you want it to do. You can just sit and tap your foot or like talk to your friend and do whatever you want. And it also feels like it has to be like that too, because the second that it's done, the second that it's out, it's not mine anymore. The second that it's out, it is not mine.
That's like you letting go of the plank in the ocean.
Maybe
too.
so.
It's like, wow, boom, gone, done.
Yeah.
It's out there.
And it's that thing that maybe comes from, I can think of many teachers talking about this, like, stop thinking about what you already played. Or like you get so attached to a thing that the piano player played that you wanted to answer, and then they're like, you're missing it all. Like you're so busy trying to figure out how to like make something out of that you're not able to be responsive to what all is happening right this minute. And that is a challenging practice, but the benefit, now I'm digressing, I just think improvisation will like save the world, but the benefit of that is if what already happened is the thing you are really good at, but the music is happening in real time and you have to respond with what is, all of a sudden you start finding new combinations of your own capacity that you wouldn't have found if you didn't challenge yourself to let go of the thing that you already knew worked. And they might be dumb, they might sound like crap, but I think that is a practice itself of like, what else is there? I already did all the things I knew. That is a practice, and I think it can become more and more and more refined, and then you let your tastes and the realities of the creative environment inform the decisions you make with that skill, you know? I think we just got the cue. Should we do...
We're going to have one more question,
okay.
I think. Nick, is it 15 minutes until music, or is it 15 minutes total?
15 minutes until it has been an hour.
Okay, so we'll take a question, and maybe we'll have one question,
Yeah,
one
we can
remark,
take a
and then
couple.
we'll sing
Okay, yeah.
some music from you.
Yeah.
That's why everyone wants
Please
music, I
select the
think.
person, because it seems like there's more
Oh,
than
no,
two
that's
people.
pressure.
Oh, no, I'll be bad cop. That's okay. Let's go in the back here.
Hi. My question for you, Esperanza, is about intentionally bringing something out versus like, not passively, but maybe just like, if it happens, it happens. When I think about magic, I think about like the weird phenomenon of thinking about someone and then them calling you or you seeing them on the street, and like synchronicity and all those things that could be maybe explained by science, but it doesn't feel that way when it happens to you, especially when it's not very probable. But then when you try to control it, it's like it's gone, you know? Or like when you, at least for me, it's like I have a very powerful passive creative mind, but like trying to make everything happen doesn't really work out as well. So when you've been talking about magic, I've heard you say a lot about healing, but I'm wondering how you feel about the magic of like potions and mixing things together and trying to bring about a particular result.
I think that like practice of quote unquote magic has a lot of value for the person making the choices of what they're going to put together, like a psychomagic value of like what it does for you as the person doing it as a process. I don't put a lot of stock or belief in the idea that somebody could make a thing over there and then like give me the drink, you know? I think it's like what you choose to go out and get has a healing effect on you as like a process of willing to turn like a situation or a stasis into active transformation. Like, I mean, I'm putting a lot on Holodowski, but I would imagine that if there's any psychoanalysts in the house, you could like back this up. That
Are there? No.
Well, making the decision that you're going to creatively engage in the transformation of your situation. Like, I think that's a very powerful alchemy in and of itself. And in a way, that's all I'm really claiming in terms of efficacy of these spells, is like the efficacy that they've had on me as a process. And because you care about my process and you're willing to like go there with me, maybe, in the adventure of like, what do these spells do? Oh yeah, I feel it in my solar plexus, like et cetera, et cetera. We're basically both playing along with my game, you know what I mean? but I hope that it could be like an invitation to make your game, you know, of like what are the elements that you put together that seem like a psychomagic act for yourself, you know?
Well, I think that's one of the big successes of the spells. It's an offering, and it's very hopeful. It's a very hopeful offering, not some saccharine kind of hope. But underneath the spells, I really feel you saying, you're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. By the way, if Trump invited you to the White House, would you go? Would you put one of your spells on him?
Okay, she asked me this in the green room, and my answer was yes, but not for an award, because I think proximity.
Yeah, I said, would you go also for an award?
I said not for an award, but I really believe in proximity. I really believe in remaining close to and engaged with that which we can't stand, that which we think will destroy us, that which we think is horrible and awful and evil. I believe proximity is like the salve of the potency that fear has to fester violence, essentially, because inevitably you're going to have to engage. And I just would prefer like an invitation of proximity where I can come as myself and get the practice of like being myself in proximity with someone that I really find difficult to stand. And from his side, he's just being himself. Remember that. From his side, he's just being him. And that's hard for me to embrace too, but like that to me seems like the most challenging practice, so that's why I want to go.
And my teeny last question, so we can hear the music. Just what you're wearing, and it used to be white, and now it's navy blue, the life force, it's got a heart on the side. You almost look like a first responder, an emergency worker. Say something about your clothing, which, lately, that's what you've been wearing all the time.
Yeah, I wear it. It's
the
my
life
uniform.
force outfit.
Although I just decided that I don't have to wear them every day anymore, which is new. But anyway.
But show the heart on your sleeve, man.
That's where it belongs. The life force, I'll put it like this. We don't have time for me to explain to you where this all came from, and it's really not that interesting anyway. But I was visiting a school. I'm part of the Turnaround Arts phenomenon that's now housed at the Kennedy Center. And so I was visiting the school and talking with some kids who were doing a musical theater thing, and they're elementary school children. And this little girl sitting next to me, and everybody was asking questions, and she raised her hand. She's like, I have a question. And she's sitting right here. She's like, I have a question. And I said, yes. She's 8 years old. She's like, are you a space pilot? And I was like,
Were you in these clothes?
I was in this exact outfit. And she's like, are you an astronaut? Like, do you work in space? And I was like, now check out how hip these kids are. Sorry. Children are everything. Anyway, I'm like, well, I'm going to say yes, but it's going to be a metaphor. Do you know what a metaphor is? And they were like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So it's going to be a metaphor. So I was like, I like to explore areas that are beyond the known territory of this earth. And I like to find new space to explore. I'm like, did you understand that? And they're like, yeah, we get it. And so then, the next thing happened, and she's looking at me, she's like, okay. And then she raised her hand again, and I'm like, yes. And she goes, she pulls me in. She goes, I'm an explorer too.
Ladies and gentlemen, Esperanza Spalding, and now she's going to play.
All right. So this first one I'm going to do for you was not written as a part of 12 Little Spells, but I think it was the beginning of this idea that something that I charged a song with might actually make a difference somewhere. And it's also the beginning of that practice where you find out what you really think and feel by creating. So this is a song called Work of Art. And I think you'll pick up who it's intended to heal. We all want to see one. We all want to be one. Even if you are. Even if you are a one. A piece of work of art. Every little part for reviewing eyes. A heathen for dancing, an angel for blanding. Anywhere you are, anywhere you really are, a line runs smeared between nothingness and meaning, shit and caviar. Cast die in tie knots where you don't want to be affected by the colors of life. Now frame that stretch of who you are. It's in again, free love and binding. We all wanna break some, the gall if you make some. Who you think you are, you think who you really are, deserves a speaking part in the role of art. Fine, but our budget's tight. See him. Most of these all but one of the spells were composed while I was not playing bass. I stopped playing bass for about 2 years, so I don't know those songs on bass. I just came back into being a bass player. Again, I want to digress. I know it's time to play music now. So I'm going to, actually I think I'll save that for last. I want to do a Joni Mitchell song that is really important to me because it's about wolves. And I know this is about 12 little spells, so again, I won't digress, but I feel that the deconstruction of the myth around wolves as these villains, these evil creatures, when in fact more livestock are killed by lightning than wolves every year. More people are killed by dogs and escalators than wolves. I feel like deconstructing that cultural scapegoat is deeply linked with deconstructing the scapegoating of black bodies and deconstructing the scapegoating that leads to state-sanctioned violence against innocent bodies. Wolves are innocent bodies. And in fact, when wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone Park, all the game became healthier and the entire park started flourishing in a new way, in its healthiest way. So this is a song called The Wolf That Lives in Lindsay. And I think that, to me, Miss Mitchell drew, in the most beautiful way, that thread that connects the scapegoating into our hidden parts, the parts that we don't want to deal with. Of the darkness in men's minds, what can you say that wasn't marked by history or the TV news today? He gets away with murder. Blizzards come and go. The flash and glare of buckshot
for derelicts or ladies of the night. They'll weed for yanking out of sight. If you're smart or rich or lucky, maybe you'll escape the laws of man, but the inner laws of spirit and the outer laws of nature, no man can, no man can. There's a wolf in Lindsay, that rants and runs through the hills of Hollywood and the downtown slums. Girls in pretty blouses, blizzards come and go, the flash and glare of buckshot and the heavy, heavy snow. It comes and goes, it comes and goes, it comes and goes, it comes and goes, comes and goes.
This is a proper spell now for your brain. For your brain. The anatomical brain, not the brain that's connected to the cloud. I'm out the house of worship, wife for pride, rife with doctrine, rife with sin. Now my laptop or devices where I shop for wisdom. At my very fingertips, so much more than some holy man could ever hope to comprehend. So maybe now the Holy Spirit is simply a mighty network, anchored in accumulated knowledge, now encompassing the globe. Zeros and ones no one can touch. You must behold. So, have you prayed to your phone today? Atoning for all ignorance, we bow our busy heads to seek immortal wisdom from the cloud, rolling down the social mountain to the tablets in each hand. 8 billion new commandments at my command, and some I post to Google humanity. But while you do, guard the animal in you, guard the animal in you, in you. No pride, no greed, no sin. Guard the animal in you, in you, in you. Guard the animal, guards the animal in you. But when you ask the web anything, it's always there for you, though the answers may not be true. Searching an engine for the ghost of truth, while the animal in you guards the tangible in you. In you, your heart, your guts, your skin, guard the tangible in you. In you, in you, guard the tangible, dance the animal.
Amazing grace, I miss you badly. I have to search the meaning of the word, so little of it sadly. With all this forward-leaning grace, if it's in me, what good is all this reading of the word? All been attachments eating into my time for living grace. If there is a God out there of the word, won't you end it famine and warfare? Grace, if you would just make these endless emails disappear. Oh, and show us how to fix the climate while you're here. Your search for help did not match any documents. Suggestions, make sure all words are spelled correctly. Try different keywords, try more general keywords. Try few more keywords, maybe try using real words. Try using your words, ask another humanoid. Try asking the one you are trying to avoid. Yourself. Now encompassing the globe, zeros and ones no one can touch, you must behold to understand the burden of evolving man. But may you not become a stranger to God, the animal in you, God, the tangible in you, in you, in you. No service page or pin, the program you came in with. God the animal, guard the tangible, God's the tangible, dance the animal in you, in you, in you, in you.
Thank you, Anna Deveare Smith, for this conversation. Oh my God.